So there is a new article out from the Daily Caller today, and this is kind of shifting into the trans medical, like the trans kids aspect of things. So it's really interesting. So Daily Caller reports we were wrong. Uh, one of the pioneers in child gender dysphoria treatment says trans medical industry is harming kids. So this is one of the
Wow.
people that was like on the forefront, like one of the people that recommended puberty blockers to children. And kind of just skipping through, it's like, so Susan Bradley, a Canadian psychiatrist and pioneer in gender dysphoria treatment, came out against the popular model of affirmation children's transgender identities and putting them on puberty blockers, a practice she was once involved in an interview with the Daily Caller News Foundation. So Bradley started a pediatric gender clinic in 1975 aimed at treating children with gender dysphoria or a deep sense of discomfort with one's body and biological sex, in which she offered therapy-focused approach. Most patients outgrew their feelings being transgender over time, she told the DNCF. Around 2000 child, the clinic began prescribing puberty blockers in gender dysphoric children as a way to relieve their distress, a model which has since become widely adopted by medical establishments around the world. Bradley, who is now in her early 80s, expresses regret that the clinic had participated in the administration of puberty blockers for gender dysphoria, which she now believes can cement a child's sense of confusion out of which they would likely outgrow. She also expressed
Yes.
concerns about the drug's side effects.
Yes.
Yeah, she says, so she goes on to say, we were wrong. They're not reversible as we always thought. And they have long-term effects on kids' growth and development, including making them sterile, quite a number of things affecting bone growth. And that's just, I mean, she goes on and continues to just talk about why these are not reversible. Now, this is huge, and only the Daily Caller so far that I've seen has reported on this.
Wow. I hadn't even seen this yet. I know there's a lot of these people who work in healthcare with so-called gender affirming care for kids who are now coming out and blowing the whistle and saying they don't agree with it anymore and here's what they've seen. But I did not hear about her. She's the third one I've heard about recently. And
Yeah,
she's right. I mean, the thing is, of course some of the side effects are not reversible and it's children. So the point at the end of one of those paragraphs, aside from the physical changes, some of which are not reversible, you've also got the psychological aspect. I'm glad she's talking about that, where a
yeah,
child might get locked into this idea themselves, something that they might otherwise leave behind, abandon, resolve in some other way. And you're not giving them the opportunity to do that as a child. You're not saying, hey, wait, let's see how things shake out until you're old enough
yep.
to make this decision. We're just saying, the way it's been going for the past 10 to 15 years is you just say, oh, okay, 4-year-old, I guess you're right. Let's get you started down this path and cement this identity in your head now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to my article that which we talked about on your show
Mhm.
about the sunk cost fallacy. And that's what puberty blockers do. Like that's why there's a reason why 98%, like it's something like 98% of those that go on puberty blockers stay on puberty blockers, or they go on to cross-sex hormones, because it locks them kind of
Yeah.
into it, which is also why we don't have the data to really show the full side effects. Like, because I had an argument with a politician here in Georgia, a Republican politician at that, who said that puberty blockers, if you come off of them, you will go through a normal puberty like anyone else. And the problem is he also admitted that there was not a lot of data on that. And part of the issue why we don't have a lot of data on that is because there's not a lot of people coming, not going on cross-sex hormones. Everybody's going straight to cross-sex hormones. So there's not really this data to say what happens if we just stop them.
To
Um,
compare it.
exactly. And to your point, like, so she actually goes on in this paragraph right here that says, we thought it was relatively safe. And endocrinologists said they're reversible and that we didn't have to worry about it. I had this skepticism in the back of my mind all the time that maybe we were actually colluding and not helping them. And I think that's proven correct in that once these kids get started at any age on puberty blockers, nearly all of them continue to want to go onto cross-sex hormones. I mean, it's exactly what you were just saying. And
Yeah.
confirming it. But that's also what we saw out of from who is it, Jamie Reed, who was the whistleblower in
Yes.
St. Louis. Like
Jamie Reed, same thing. She was like 100%, 100% of kids continue
it
and
was
end up
something,
getting,
yeah.
it was something astronomical. And she was saying you don't get that kind of a number. Like that doesn't happen. You're
No.
going to usually have a certain number of people that say, oh, well, I'm going to stop, or I'm going to do that, but to have 100% of cases say, okay, sign me up for that next part. That's an indication that there's something psychologically happening, that you're locking people into this one path and the other path doesn't even seem like an option. And then later
No,
what you're
yeah.
getting is this regret where people are detransitioning after they've already made a lot of these medical choices that have in some cases affected their body permanently.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we're seeing a lot of. And yeah, you're right. It's been over like the last 5 or 6 years that we've seen this rise, and now we're starting to see the number of detransitioners skyrocket, which I've talked about this before. I predicted it in 2018. I saw the transgender movement happening, and I said I got kicked out of Reddit groups for saying that when the detransition rate skyrockets, it's going to harm trans people, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. People are coming after people like me who have been speaking out against this stuff, but they're basically now they're saying there are no good trans people. Blair White's getting attacked by people on the right and people on the left because of what we're seeing, the craziness that's happening in this movement.
Because people, unfortunately, I think some people, it's easier just to see things in black and white.
Yeah.
Us and them, and not actually listen to what people are saying or to have that nuance there. I think it's very important to have trans people who experience gender dysphoria, who live as the opposite sex, I think it's very important to have them speak out against medically and uh, chemically transitioning children, because that's the kind of voice that the left likes to claim they're speaking for. That's why that's important. It's very important. You, Sarah, bring a whole different weight to this issue than I do. You know what I mean? The same way that, my friend who's black and not woke, who co-hosts with me on Wednesday nights, he brings a whole different weight to this issue, to the issue of, the race issue that's in social justice, and gets in trouble for it at work. Because he's anti-woke and black, and they're like, "What are you?" But it's like, that brings a different weight to it because they like to claim to speak for you, if you're black, if you're a woman, if you're trans, if you're gay.
Well, we see it so often too. And now, like, shoot, this thing was trending on Twitter the other day. Remember, there was this girl who again was this trans woman who was trying to say that she was getting her period every month. And it's like, no. That's not happening. It's not a period. You don't have a uterus. You can't shed your lining.
Do
That's
you
what a
ever
period
look
is.
at this stuff and are just like cringe, like, I'm not one of you? Like,
well, it came up, and then I said, you're a troll, right? Like, the only way that anybody actually thinks that they can get a period as a trans woman is like said in satire, I would have to think, because it's so ridiculous, right?
No.
And she quote tweeted me and said, "No, I'm trans. You can deal with it, bigot." Called me a bigot, and I retweeted her and said, "Honey, that's not a period. That's probably just gas, but you might want to go get it checked out."
Exactly.
And then that caused everybody to then quote tweet this not poor because they were way out of line, but this person just getting lambasted. Actually, I think Blair retweeted it, like quote tweeted. It was like everybody. I'm like, what did I start?
Well, no, I've seen some of those people, and I've been down some weird rabbit holes on Twitter and Reddit, and I don't know what you would call, I hesitate to call them trans women, because I think they give people with gender dysphoria a bad name. I'm not convinced that they have gender dysphoria. I think it's more of a fetish for some of these people.
I think some of it's about control. They
Yes.
like the feeling that they can use this to control people. It's not even that it's
Yes.
just a sexual fetish. I think that's what it is. They're like, I have
And for
points.
some of
I
those
can
people, like, they
clout.
have severe mental illness and they really do believe
Yep.
that they can have their period, or I've seen forums and stuff where they all trade tips on how to simulate having a period by using tomato juice and stuff, and
So
it's like, what is wrong with you?
yeah. Now I will say because they started to shift their tone, but this is the whole thing. Somebody then another person, I think it was one of these white knights, was trying to come in and again try to. It's so funny. I call it cisplain to them. I call it
Okay.
the left is cisplaining to me because they're trying to explain to me what being trans is like, and they're not trans. And so, but they sent me this article that was, and I'm like, it literally says that there's no data on this in the very first paragraph. Like, what are you talking about? Like and it says most of it's psychosomatic. Now, what they were, I'm going to, and this might be being generous to these people, but I am going to say that yes, being on hormones can give you some sort of cycle. They also say that men, biological men who are, just men, have emotional cycles too. And so if
Mm.
you're, so they say men experience like PMS like symptoms sometimes. And so I can see that that might affect your mental state, at different points of the month, but you're not shedding your uterine lining. And if you're not cycling your hormones, then you're not doing it. Now, you actually see it more. You see this type of emotional swings more with trans women who are injecting estrogen instead of taking the pill. Because if you think about it, you inject estrogen and your
Mhm.
levels spike. And then as they decline, your emotional,
So they're
so
having
when
an
you inject,
emotional cycle.
yeah,
Okay,
so it kind
but you're
it does
not
it kind of mimics an
menstruating.
emotional cycle. Yeah, exactly. And like I said, I'm probably being a little bit generous as to what they meant, but I do
I think
know
you're
that
being
there's been
very
science that,
generous, but okay.
but there has been science that has shown again, like men have emotional cycles too.
Right.
But like, and I don't feel like have like a cycle each month. So I don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't make any sense
I
to me.
think, well, if you're a man who lives with a woman, you might have an emotional cycle that coincides with hers. A
Yeah,
reactive.
well, it's kind of the same. Well, I think you're right, and I also think that that kind of comes with how women sync up and stuff like that too when they live together. And so, but it is interesting. I don't know. Yeah, but back to like these whistleblowers, like I think the whole Jamie Reed thing is fascinating because she was is a self-proclaimed radical leftist who her politics are further to the left of Bernie Sanders, and she's married
Yes.
to a trans man.
She's married to a trans man. She describes herself as queer. It is gonna be very hard for them to give her that treatment we talked about before that they like to give to people on the left who go against the narrative, like, you know,
Yeah,
suddenly smearing and hating Julian Assange or Elon Musk or Matt Taibbi or whoever. It's hard to do that to her because she's a queer woman married to a trans
right.
man.
Well, what I have noticed is they've shifted their tactics though to where they are like, she is like now they're just saying, oh, she was just a receptionist. She didn't really deal with this stuff.
Saw
She
that,
wasn't,
which is not true. She was
yeah,
the case manager
yeah, which deals intimately with this type of
very
stuff.
intimately.
And so they're trying to discredit her in different ways, and so they got like 4 parents that had went to the clinic and tried to get them to say, "No, this didn't happen," and they said it, but it was only like a very like anecdotal amount of parents that were like, "This didn't happen to us."
Yeah. Yeah,
That's what they always do,
they are
though.
switching their tactics, you're right. With someone like her, they have to. What are they gonna
Yeah,
do?
actually, to that point though, I've actually kind of talked about this a little bit. I think that the lawsuits, like Chloe Cole's lawsuit and the whistleblowers, are going to be key in ending this stuff. I mean, I'm working on legislation, but in blue states,
Okay.
there's no other way to end this type of stuff in blue states other than lawsuits, which actually take away the incentive for these doctors to be performing this type of
Yes,
stuff.
yes. People are gonna have to get sued.
Yeah,
I think parents and doctors are gonna be sued
yeah,
because children can't consent to this. It's like, what were
no.
we thinking?
It's really interesting because they always talk about consent, but they don't talk about consent when it comes to children being able to consent to life-altering procedures.
Right. Right. It suddenly goes out the window. I find that's the best way to present it when I do talk to people on the left who have just sort of uncritically gone along with this,
Yeah.
is I just ask them, in our society, we're a society that has laws, and certain things we've agreed on are a violation of other people's rights, and we've, as a society, decided that children need to be protected, that they are not the same as adults. And so we have a variety of things that we do not allow children to do that we allow adults to do. And like
Yeah.
smoking and driving and drinking and having sex with adults and voting and serving the military, all getting a tattoo, all of these things. And yet you think that a child can choose to take hormones that might sterilize them for life?
Yeah, I think I try to give a lot of people a lot of grace on this issue. I think that they are just uneducated on the issue,
Yeah.
and most people want to do the right
Yeah.
thing. It's they think that they're doing what is right by these kids because they've been manipulated to say that these kids are going to commit suicide if they don't get this treatment,
Yeah.
so that this is life saving. It's not life saving. It's like if it's going to help very minimal people. In fact, you know, if you transition and then it's wrong for you and you feel like you've ruined your life, then what do you do? It's the
Exactly.
opposite of life saving.
Exactly. And they don't care about that. They'll say, if it saves only one life, when that supports whatever it is they're pushing, doesn't even have to be related to
Yeah.
trans issues, but they won't say that if it goes against, like with a lot of things. I think when you're in an ideology like social justice or woke, um, they're not consistent. They're not intellectually consistent. They don't have principles. They just say whatever they need to that's expedient in the moment to emotionally manipulate you over to their side.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, if it just saves one life, it's like, okay, so you harm 9 to save 1. That's kind of what we're doing. It's like,
Mhm.
because 90% will usually grow out of it. So you're gonna
Yeah.
do that to save 1? It's hard to
It's hard to
hard
justify
to
that.
fathom.